Hi guys, Tiffany, and welcome to my quilting life. So it's nighttime, obviously, because I'm in my pajamas. But this is my life, and I'm going to show you what I do when I'm readying something to go on the long arm. I have been asked as a request to make a video specifically towards how to load a long arm frame. Well, mine is a King Quilter frame, so obviously it's probably similar to what you have. Most quilt frames have a top rail, a take-up rail, and then they have a leveler bar. I've seen it on a lot, but there's not, I don't know how to say this. There isn't, there's smaller frames that don't have the leveler bar and your top rail. What we're talking about here is quilt frames that have a top rail and a leveler bar, and then this one right here, which would be for your quilt top, and this bar right here, which is also for your quilt back. I'm going to show you how to load my frame. So it's similar to yours probably. They're Grace frames, Gamel frames, you name it. They all pretty much have a similar concept. So let's get to this process.
Go.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this top rail right here and my cloth leader. This is a cloth leader. And I'm going to pull it out all the way to where it's completely expanded out. On some frames, this is really, really long. That's how you know which one is your take-up rail. I'm going to pull it to the front as if it was coming out to the end. And then I'm going to pick it up over itself. And I'm going to go to the whole entire frame, down the whole thing, and I'm going to grab this and make sure it's nice and straight the whole time, my cloth leader. And I'm going to pick it up, fold it around on both ends. I always start in the middle because if I start at one end and then move it to the other end, like if I picked up here and then started going that way, what's going to happen is I'm going to shift my cloth leader and it won't stay center. I've noticed that happens. Some people might have that problem and then their quilt will shift on the way down and kind of be a little bit crooked, but the quilt is actually straight. It just rolls up that way. That's because when you're using your cloth leaders, you need to make sure that they stay just as straight as possible. Okay, so now we're at the front side because now we have shifted over our cloth leader on the back, which is this one. So if you're on the back of the machine right now, you are there. Now we're on the front where I would quilt from. So this is my quilt back. What we're going to do is we're going to move these to the side, and I'm going to take the furthest one to me, which would be this one. This is my take down rail, actually, is what I call it, for the backing. And I'm going to unroll this one all the way as well. This top bar, and it comes off really easily, if you can see, it comes off super easy. This top rail is for the quilt top. We're going to wait a minute because right now we're just working with the back of the quilt. Take this and we're going to flip it up and over itself. And I'm going to start in the middle, the same as the back, and I'm going to pull it around as I go this way. So my cloth leader is coming into the center, up and back towards me. Pretty much over the take-up rail for the, or I should say take-down rail for the quilt top. So right now we're working on the back. So I'm pulling it towards me, and as I go, if you haven't noticed, I'm actually trying to pull threads off because sometimes they roll up and I end up quilting them into the quilt because the fuzz will touch the quilt. So now that I have this towards me, I'm just going to let it fall. And we're going to go to the next section. So now we're going to take the quilt top, or the quilt back, I mean, sorry. We're going to take this quilt back and we're going to take our magnet, or my magnet tray full of pins, because I pin. I don't sew anything on or anything like that. I just pin it and go. So what we're going to do is we're going to come from the front of the quilt, from the front of the frame. I'm going to take my pins temporarily and stick them right here because it's magnetized to everything and my pins are pretty much falling out, as you can see. I'm just going to leave it right there for a second. And I'm going to hold up my quilt backing. Finding the direction, because this is a directional one. If you didn't have a directional, I would say find the direction that it needs to be, length and width. And I'm going to hold it up here in the center, fold it in half, wrong sides together, and I'm going to hold it like this, find my end, find my center, and I'm going to make a mark. Now, if you don't have the nails to make a mark on your quilt back, see how I just made that crease? Then you can take and put a pin in that center, just like so, so you know where your center is. Now, I'm going to hold this up, and I'm going to take this top and put it right sides over this back rail, and just leave it right there. So my quilt top, it's got so many little fuzzes in it. Now, I'm going to take the bottom of it, of the quilt back, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold it in half, touch my two ends, and find my center. Again, I'm just going to crease it with my finger so that I have a mark that you can see. That's how I find my center, but if you don't want to do it that way, find your center by folding it. You can stick your pin in, open it up so that you know that center. Place your pin down in and keeping it center. Just leave it there. Now that it's hanging, we're going to put it on this side over our cloth leader, right sides together, making your quilt top or your quilt backing face down towards the floor. Okay, so now that we have it laid here, we are going to take this back cloth leader and the quilt back, and we're going to find that center. We're going to lay it right on here, and I have a pin holding as well, but I'm going to take that pin out, holding it right here. So this edge is going to be flush with my cloth leader, as you can see, and I'm going to pop that pin in about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/2 inch, somewhere in that range. And we're going to straighten the whole thing out so that it lays nice and flat, just like so. Now that it's nice and flat, I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to put it right at the end of this pin. Then I'm going to take another pin, I'm going to lay it in right past my thumb and slide it up in, taking about 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to do the same thing again. Put my thumb at the end, put the pin in, come to the other end. And I'm going to do that all the way down. So now that we have pinned the one side, like I said, every thumb apart, then I'm going to come to this side, and I want my pins all to stay the same exact way. So what I'm going to do is put my thumb here, I'm going to put a pin in, and I'm going to estimate, just like so, where it's going to come out so that it will come out head to pin. I like a lot of pins in my projects, even small ones, because it holds it really nice. And I have my finger here because I'm going the opposite way. So I try to assume where it's going to come out, and they'll be touching head to head. And I use my little magnetic tray full of pins and just keep going. And I think these pins are like 1.5 inches. I need to get new ones. I like that they're flat though, but bead-headed pins are probably a little bit better to use. These start bending after a while, especially if you barely put any pins in. So I'm just going to do this side and I'll be right back. So now that we have finished the back, I'm going to leave it just like it is. Now if this was a bigger quilt, it would be touching the ground. So make sure that you have something on the ground, or you have carpet or something in case your quilt top has white. I just happen to be in my garage, so I have to put something on the ground to keep my quilt tops from touching. So now we're going to do the same exact thing. Here's our center. I have a center mark on all of my cloth leaders. I'm going to find that center. I'm going to put that pin there. I'm just going to hold it right here for a second while I adjust, keeping that center right there in the center. Since this is a directional quilt, I have to make sure that everything is aligned just right. I even know how far down I need to go when I do the quilt top. So again, I'm going to do the same exact thing that I did on the top. I'm going to hold my thumb, and I'm going to take a pin, I'm going to drop it in, and making sure that my piece of fabric, my backing, is lined up with the cloth leader the whole way down. I'm not going to worry if it's messed up because I will align it down the way, and that will keep from having too many wrinkles and so on and so forth. So I'll be right back when I get to the next step. Now that I have gone and pinned the one side, again, I just want to remind you for the other side, it's the same thing. put your thumb at the head, and you're just going to estimate about the 1/4 of an inch that you're going to take of a pinch with your needle so that they come head to head. Now you don't really need to put this many pins, but I use my first finger when I go the backwards way, but I like I said, my pins to all face the same direction. And I seem to be grabbing more than a 1/2 inch there accidentally because I'm trying to do this quick. So this is how it works. Let me get this pinned and I'll be right back. Here we go. So now that I have the whole thing pinned, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick this bottom one up because we're at the front of the quilt. I'm going to try not to stab myself a bazillion times. And I'm just going to drop it down. So I'm going to come and drop it down on the whole entire thing, pick it up, and drop it down. Then I'm going to grab the other one. I know this seems weird because it's going on the floor, but I'm going to grab the top and I'm going to lay that down too. And I'm going to make sure that everything throughout the frame is opened up, even if this right here, and nothing is touching the edge, so that when I go to roll, everything stays nice and straight. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my take-up rail right here, and I have my lock off. If it's on, it comes this way, so you know that's the way the quilt top needs to be rolled up. So now I get it to the top, and I'm just going to kind of roll it up on there. And it's going to have lots and lots of wrinkles, but I'm trying to bring it up high enough so that I could take this one. If it ungoes this way, so I'm going away from me, that's how it's going to unroll. That means I need to roll it towards me, like so. So that when it's going off, it comes off that way. So again, I'm just going to roll it towards me, and it looks funky. It's kind of got to go over to the other end. Straighten that cloth leader out because again, like I said, you need to keep your cloth leader straight too. So I'm going to come here and pull some dust and strings, and the whole time that I'm rolling, there it is. I'm going to take my lint remover from the dollar store, and I'm going to wipe off any excess lint from my quilt back as I roll it towards me. Now remember, I did it to where my quilt back faces the floor, so it is right side down. So now as I roll it towards me, all this should lay nice and flat. And I'm going to get all these excess threads cleaned up. Again, just going to lay it here. I'll unroll a little bit. I'm going to keep this nice and flat, and I'm going to keep these lined up on the end right here. So I'm just going to roll, and I see something that needs to be wiped. I'll wipe it real quick. And I'm going to flatten it out as I come to me, but don't do it too tight. So I'm going to push that top down a little bit and make sure this is nice and rolled. I'm rolling it towards me. If I see anything, again, I'm going to grab it off of here. There's a lot of lint because this is fabric and it gets linty. Unroll the top a little. Again, making sure that my ends are not rolling over on top of each other like a tunnel. I'm just going to make sure they're nice and flat. This is pieced, so usually, you know, if it wasn't a pieced backing, I would say that it's easier to roll up. The pieced ones, you have to be careful because I'm trying to keep certain seams a certain way. That way there's no lumps and bumps when I'm quilting under the quilt. So again, just going to wipe all this off. Just like so, and that's the last of it. And any stray threads, because obviously this is pieced, so it's shredding a little, because all fabric shreds. I just put the shredding into the seams. Every once in a while I'll cut it off if it's too much. Again, just a little bit more. Grab this piece of thread. I'm going to come towards me, keeping this nice and flat. Okay, so now that I got it all rolled up, I'll be right back with the next step. Okay, so next step, now that we have the backing rolled on and it's nice and flat, I'm going to pop my locks so that it's nice and tight. Well, not tight, but almost tight. It's got a lot of bounce. But okay, so normally you would take your quilt top and hook it to this after you put batting, but I am avoiding this because I'm just going to float my top, which I'll show you what that is. So I just pop it off, and I place it on the ground in front of me, I'll pick it up in just a little bit. And we're going to grab our batting. I'm trying not to let it touch the ground because I don't want anything in the batting. There's always seems to get lots of thread. So now I'm going to open it up and I'm going to find the shimmer side, which is not that side, and it's that side. I want this shimmer side facing down. This is just a poly blend. It's about 6 ounce or 6 weight or something like that. 6 ounce. I think it's called 6 ounce, honestly. I'm going to line it up to where it is lined up along my pins. Nice and straight. I have an equal amount on both sides because I cut it bigger than it needed to be. I'm going to go through and pick off any pieces because they always get picked up off of the floor, and I don't want to see this through any white on my quilt top. So let me get this situated and I'll be right back. So now we're going to take the quilt top and I'm just going to lay it here for a second because now we need to add our bungees, and I think they're probably just the right length for this, so that's actually good. Now I'm just going to clip them to the edge. This one's kind of tight, so I'm going to loosen it a little. And I got little pins that pin it in. And I'm going to come to the other side, and I have a bungee holding my quilt, or my long arm, because it likes to roll on its own. It is actually level in the garage. It's the weirdest thing. We got it really, really level, but this thing just likes to roll on its own. I'll take the other bungee. And as you can see, my machine is just kind of making its way down the frame. It stops about halfway. It's the weirdest thing, but we checked it. It's all nice and level. All right, I got these bungees on here. They're not very tight. They're kind of tight, but not super tight. They're good. So you can see right here on the quilt, it's nice and bouncy. Again, we're going to put this batting back. Make sure that your shimmer side of your batting is facing down, or it would be the softer side if you're using 100% cotton. All right, so now we're going to take the top, we're going to open it up, I'm going to shake any threads off, and I'm going to find the direction that it is supposed to be facing, which is this, and I'm going to fold it in half, just the top only because I'm floating it. I'm going to find my center, I'm going to mark it with my finger like I've been doing, or you can put a pin in that center. I'm going to open it up and lay it right here, putting my center at the center line right here at the top. So I want my batting just a little bit higher for a second. My center is going to line up with my center line on my cloth leader. I'm going to bring it here, line it up nice and straight. We're going to back up. I'm going to make sure that it's laying nice and flat. That center needs to stay in the center. Adjust it just right. Make sure this is nice and flat because I'm floating it. I'm going to grab the top. I'm going to slide it under so that it lays nice and flat. I'm going to go over it, check again, make sure my center is still in the center, which it is. Lined up at the top exactly where I need to be. This one's cutting it close because most long armors want at least 4 inches all the way around just for this specific thing, but I made this myself so I know exactly where I need to be. So as long as it's where I need to be, we're going to check from the end. We're going to stand here at the end, right here. We're going to stand right here at the end, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to see if that top is aligned nicely. And I'm going to pop it nice and tight. Now that everything's nice and tight, you would take your machine. I don't have the proper thread hooked up right now, but the next step would be taking your machine, sliding it under, and basting it. Pop your needle down and baste it all the way across. Just like so, a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And then you would come down one side, break thread, come over to the other side, pop your thread down, and sew it back up. Or you can sew down, it doesn't matter which way you go. And then your quilt is basted, and it is ready to go. And obviously in my pajamas in my garage doing my thing, because this is Tiffany's Quilting Life, I'm here to show you how to load a long arm frame. So I thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like my videos and share them if you think someone else can, get some use out of what I'm teaching. So thank you for watching. Bye.